Hello, friends. We're back again. It's Fightful Overbooked, and it's time for a little bit of a history lesson. Because I don't know if y'all know, but there's a pay-per-view coming up this weekend. AEW is putting on Revolution.
Are we gonna call it a premium event like the other company?
No,
it's a pay-per-view. It's a pay-per-view.
I have to pay per each view of it,
Yes.
or I can go to the movie theaters. Well, the states you can, Canada you can't.
Or less than legal means, which you shouldn't do because
do as you please. Just watch your show. Either way, there's a dog collar match on this gimmick, and I said I gotta talk about dog collar matches because maybe people don't know Piper in Portland. Maybe people don't understand references like that. Maybe I should bring on my buddy Jeff Hawkins for a history lesson. So I did it. And Jeff, how are you?
Old man Hawkins coming to tell you about the dog collar matches. Yeah, no, I'm great. I've been watching a lot of dog collar matches, even the ones that we're not going to speak on, just for some historical clarity and stuff like that. And I've actually enjoyed it. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this.
This is probably one of the most fun random shows that I get to do because you and I often talk about just like old wrestling, and I'm like not like 20 years ago, but like we're going back 30, 40, 50 years because while I don't have the knowledge base that you have, I have a little bit, and I can at least try and link everything to what is going on now in wrestling, or at least you can give me a little bit more of like why it's historically significant.
Well, the fun thing about this is that AEW has done a lot of the work to link these things together with the Punk "Will You Be My Valentine" promo. What a lot of people don't know about the dog collar match is that Piper brought this from Georgia, where he was previously 82, 83. And if you haven't had the chance to watch promos from Roddy Piper at this time, he is absolutely fantastic for all the great stuff he did once he got to WWF. The stuff he's doing in Georgia is magic. And 82, 83, around that time is a magical time in Georgia wrestling. And it's stuff I hadn't even watched as a kid. I had to go back and watch it in my things, but you had ships crossing through the night of various territories. Ole Anderson's the big guy there, but you have things like Jerry Lawler, Larry Zbyszko's there, Stan Hansen pops in a little bit here and there, Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer, Abdullah the Butcher, Kabuki, Gary Hart, Tommy Rich is a hot babyface down there at this time. And it's great. And they were in cooperation with the Crockett territory at the same time within the NWA. And the inkling of where the dog collar match came from is Roddy Piper had been a heel aligned with other heels in beating down Tommy Rich, and I believe Pez Watley was another babyface during this time. And Roddy Piper being Roddy Piper was a lot like, if you want to give a modern character, when Moxley's really at his peak and he's just talking and he's not really a babyface and he's not really a heel. It's a little bit of that Austin type of thing too. Mm-hmm. Roddy Piper in Georgia is really the archetype for that because he is a heel, but he is a heel that other heels don't necessarily like or trust because he is a bit of a wild card.
So I had read In the Pit with Piper, which was the book that he had written or ghostwritten in the early 2000s. I was very lucky. I got a signed copy from Piper. There was a whole radio call-in show. Don't need to get into it, but I was a big Piper fan. Like I was a big wrestling fan as a kid. And I just remember like calling into this show in Ottawa, Canada and getting a free book out of it. So
nice.
I just remember reading the book. It's so intently, but never remembering Piper getting cheered, including his WCW, like his
it's
WCW
amazing
run. He was getting cheered, but it wasn't the same as it was like watching the dog collar match with him and Greg Valentine at Starrcade 83.
Yeah, when he goes to Carolina, he is pure babyface. He is aligned with Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat, which on TV, they're doing 6-man matches with those three at times, or even Jay Youngblood, who was teaming with Steamboat at the time, but against guys like Dick Slater and Dory Funk, who was kind of on his way out of the territory, and Bob Orton. Harley Race wasn't there at the time, but he was the champ. He was the traveling champ going to all the territory. So it's wild to watch Piper as a babyface, but it was also so easy to make him a babyface, because when they did in Georgia, he's the same guy. He's just attacking different people. And because people loved his promos
Yeah. Yeah.
for the same reason. He never really changed. It's just, hey, it's so easy to turn him babyface because all you have to do is have one of these really bad guys say something to Piper that Piper doesn't like. And Piper will just take it as a sign of disrespect and go, "You're not going to talk to me that way." And then everybody will start cheering him. I mean, he is absolute magic during these early '80s promos before he goes up to Crockett and then goes up to Vince Land in Connecticut. But the inkling of this program was he was a heel and he was attacking Tommy Rich, and also attacking the Tommy Rich were, Paul Ellering was a heel manager at this time, and he was starting to build this quote unquote Legion of Doom with Hawk and Animal, who were green as grass then, but Buzz Sawyer was a part of this as well. And Ole Anderson was a heel as well. And somewhere in there, I didn't get to see the exact turn due to time constraints. I've seen it before, but I believe it was just there was a miscommunication, or Piper didn't like something that was said to him or being ordered. And so Sawyer and Piper get into a feud, and they start cutting promos on each other, and they start having matches at the Omni with each other, and it starts to escalate. And so naturally, in the old days, when you'd have a feud, you'd start with a match at a house show or something to that effect, and then you'd add a stipulation to do the blow off. And the blow off here was a concoction by Piper. Well, you call yourself a mad dog. Well, let's have a dog collar match. And the dog collar match was nothing more than kind of an offshoot of things like Wahoo McDaniel's Indian strap match, or later you'd get a Russian chain match, but it's different because you have the chain connected to a dog collar on your neck. And to do that, now the funny thing is they did all these promos and like their training promos of Ellering training Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer, which are fantastic. There's a couple of training montages of Piper, trying to pull a truck with the collar around his neck and doing neck bridges and all these other things, and it's great. But nobody can tell you if the match actually happened at the Omni unless they were there, because everything I've tried to find on this, nobody really knows. And nobody really knows the results. The only thing they know, and this is pertinent to your interest, is that they also booked these matches when Tunney was running Toronto, the NWA up there. Jack Tunney was running the NWA Toronto, and that Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer, being the kind of guy he is, no-showed those matches in Toronto for the dog collar match they were going to do in Toronto. For those of you who don't know who Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer is, number one, he always looks 45 years old, even though he passed away at the age of 32. But do yourself a favor and go listen to interviews about he is not a good person. He is a fascinating guy to watch in the ring, because he's one of those guys who would excel in something like a Bill Watts territory. Big hoss, probably had some steroids in him. He really liked cocaine because he did die having a large heart, but tough guy. At least wrestling tough guy. Carny as hell. The most famous story for modern wrestling fans probably is that a young Mark Calloway, when Sawyer went to, I believe it was the Sacramento, I believe it was Northern California territory he was at, and their commercials for this, he was opening a wrestling school that would play there. And so he was opening a wrestling school, and he ripped off a young Mark Calloway of, I believe, a couple $1,000s, might be in the high hundreds, and then just left for another job. And this was the days where wrestling training was get a bunch of guys in, get them to pay your money, beat the hell out of them until they don't want to come back. That's all wrestling training was. Now there'd be the occasional person where, oh, that guy looks big and tough, we could use him, and maybe we train him. And so go a little bit easy on him. But like, even when I was looking to get into wrestling training, it was you pay some grizzled big dude to run you up and down stairs for 3 hours and Indian, squats and things like until you puke. And they just, for me it was, and then they dislocate your shoulder while putting a sugar hold on you. And then you decide, oh, I have a college degree, I'm never doing this again. And we're out. So yes, he was the man who ripped off The Undertaker. And, and then one day in WCW, when then Mark Callis, who was under the management of Paulie Dangerously, I believe at the time, was there. Well, they had brought in Buzz Sawyer to work. I believe it was with J-Tex. It might have been after that, but Buzz Sawyer was there in the locker room. Buzz Sawyer had forgotten that he had ripped off this young, tall, redhead guy, and by then Mark Callis had some striking in him and things like, and he proceeded to knock out all of Buzz Sawyer's bottom teeth, as the story goes, or at least gave him a nice beating in the locker room, and nobody did a thing because that was Buzz Sawyer. If you watch interviews with Cornette or Arn Anderson, Buzz Sawyer liked to take liberties because unless you were going to punch him back, what are you going to do about it? And some guys would, and the way to get his respect was to punch him in the face and listen to him whine about it, and then hold your ground when he whined about it, because he'd come in to like, what the F are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. This is supposed to be work. You mark, and you'd have to stand your ground with that. Hey, Buzz, you're the one punching me in the face out there. So that would be the kind of relationship you'd have to have with him. And he burned a lot of bridges, but then they'd always bring him back because he was a legit tough guy and people loved watching, his kinds of matches. But passed away fairly early in his 30s, like lower 30s, I believe. But a fascinating guy in the wrestling thing. So I just bring that up as context to say where this match came from. Piper then takes it and goes up when Crockett is the majority, as opposed to working the Atlanta territory, he's working the Charlotte territory, and Crockett has this thing for Starrcade to come up, and Piper goes up and he's in the studio commenting on a Greg Valentine match. Greg Valentine, the U.S. champion at the time, I believe.
Yeah.
And Piper's like, this is Piper. He's being respectful, but in a passive aggressive way, as Piper can only do. If you've listened to him, he's like, well, he is a great champion. He is very talented. And it's not that hard to be a great champion when you don't put your belt up against anybody. And of course, Valentine takes exception to this. Yelling at Bob Caudle, why are you even having this guy on when I'm trying to do this? And that's the beginning of that feud. And that turns into a match for the title where Greg Valentine hits Piper with a ring bell right in the ear. Yep. Allegedly, this is where he loses hearing. You'll hear Piper tell these stories that he lost half his hearing during the dog collar match as well. Who knows if he actually lost half of his hearing at any time, because the ear was always part of the story.
Yeah.
But yes, it builds from the first house show match where he loses the title into, hey, he gives Valentine a present to open on the air. And it's a dog collar with a chain. And of course, by Valentine, oh my God, you can't expect, and eventually talks himself into doing this match. And so we get to Starrcade 83.
So let's break there for a sec. So now those at home who are thinking, oh, there's a gift. The gift sounds a little familiar. We did the same thing with CM Punk and the challenge to MJF going into the dog collar match and the Will You Be My Valentine.
Mm-hmm.
The US title did come into play, at least in the opening stages of their feud. They did trade the titles back and forth, but for some reason they didn't put the US title on the line in this match for the at Starrcade.
Yes, because the story was that Jim Crockett found this match to be so bloody and so violent,
so barbaric,
that we could not possibly sanction this as an official match, which was a gimmick that they would use for these type of things. Number one, when they didn't want to switch the title when it was time, but also to hype it up a little bit. Look, we can't put the title on the line, but this match is going to be bloody, and you're going to see these people bleed, and that would excite people of that time who, look, this is still the kayfabe period where a lot of people still think this is real. So it works.
And exactly. You've got these two guys who are going to beat the shit out of each other.
And they do.
And they do. So I mean, if you want to lead us through that match a bit, it does get bloody. There's a focus on the ear. There's a lot of just guys throwing each other around and trying to jockey for position with the chain that keeps them linked together.
The thing that fascinated me on a rewatch was, number one, because this was the third match I think I watched from I didn't start from the beginning to the end, but you see during dog collar matches how the collars have genuinely gotten looser and looser over time. Not this match. That dog collar is on tight. The chain is heavy. And they start by doing a neck tug of war, which
Yes.
can't be good for for the neck, but it builds a certain amount of tension that when you have the chain expand, because the chain's also gotten longer over time, so that people can do more wrestling moves and throw people a lot more. But really in this kind of match, the drama is, when is somebody gonna get whipped with the chain, and when is somebody gonna get hung by the neck by the chain in the
Yep.
early 80s stages. You can watch this, watch Sawyer against Duggan, because that's the kind of same story as well, when Sawyer brings it to the UWF slash Mid South region. But this becomes a story of this. There are no wrestling moves other than maybe an elbow drop in this entire match. You have, which it makes it different from the other matches afterwards. So you have the general. He puts the chain around the eyes and then around the mouth, and he's whipping him with it. Guys get, you tie the chain around the pole and pull it, and you bring a guy up against it.
I love that spot, by the
I
way.
loved it
Putting
too. I hope they
the
do it.
chain around the ring post, you gotta
Yes.
do that more. Yeah.
Yes, and the entire psychology is using, as opposed to doing just a wrestling match with a chain in it. This is a fight. This is what I
Yeah.
love. This is what I say needs to happen more with these types of matches, even though, oh, you don't understand modern wrestling, just blah 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 blah. This interest, look, if they're doing suplexes with a chain, I wouldn't be as interested. Let's put it that way. And we'll get into that if we talk about Punk a little bit more. But for
Yeah.
this is just two men beating on each other with a chain, wrapping it around, figuring out ways to choke and bite, and they blade very early, so the blood's flowing. And then at the end of the match, Piper wins with a roll up using the chain for more leverage on the legs, which is great.
Not before he punches at
Yes,
Valentine a little bit too,
yes.
just to get that
Wraps
last
it around,
little bit
wraps it
in.
around the fist,
Yeah.
and just punches, which is a great looking spot.
So I agree with you, by the way, that it is going to be less about doing the moves, and it's more about it. The idea of the dog collar match becomes, how do you use the object to gain leverage on your
Yes.
opponent. And if this happens on Sunday with Punk and MJF, then that's an excellent match. Even do a scoop suplex, you can do that. Pick them up, slam them down, as long as you hit the chain on the way down, because then at least you've got a story that you're using the chain to add a little bit of pain to your moves.
Right, and the thing about this was, and I've already forgotten my point that I was gonna make here. And that's the thing. And a
Old
point
man Jeff forgets his
I
points.
forgot what I was gonna make, but the whole thing of the fight feel. I had something about that I couldn't remember, but it was it. Nevertheless, it's coming and it's gone. I'll probably remember it later, but there was something about the apex of this match that I wanted to say, and I can't remember it in favor of your point about the match thing. But nevertheless, we can move on to where it went. It evolved. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were, oh, I know what I was gonna say. WWF ruined this match, as it does cage matches and other things, because they put their own spin on it. When WWF does these types of matches, they do the four corner tap thing, which is booked the same way every time. Heel hits everyone, and while babyface follows, and then on the fourth one gets yanked back. Babyface valiantly hits the fourth one. It's like the escape the cage thing in WWF, which made cage matches lame after a while. That was the point I wanted to make. But
I think the only time where it looked cool was actually the bull rope match. Was it Eddie and, oh god, what was it? Someone on the back of the other guy in
yes,
the bull rope match. It was,
yes.
and I think Eddie was one of them, but I forget who. Maybe
Was
JBL.
it
And
JBL? Had to be
it,
JBL.
it had to be, because it's Eddie and JBL. And then one would tap
Yes.
the corner, and then the other would tap it, and then they ended up winning because of that. Stuff like that works, but I agree with you. Doing the whole tap the four corners in a match that's supposed to be brutal, not
And you
so
can do that.
effective.
I mean, that's how they do chain matches now, and those types of like strap matches and things like that. That's how they do those. You watch two guys like Bulldog and Vader who had one of these matches, and they're just hostile. You just want to watch them beat each other up. Who wants
Yeah,
to watch them hit
exactly.
hit turnbuckles?
Yeah, exactly. And then at the end of the day, someone gets a pinfall and wins the match, but that's not how we're doing it there.
But we rebrought this back for ECW, which was at this time it was an amalgam of everything I loved in wrestling, because it was guys passing through the night on their way between WCW and WWF. This is 1995, Gangsta's Paradise, which is summer 95. The Steiner brothers were in the territory. Steve Austin was in there pretending to be Hulk Hogan because WCW didn't like him anymore. Too Cold Scorpio is holding court here. It's pretty great, but we have a gimmick of the Pit Bulls, formerly known as the American Pit Bulls in a different federation, but they had been heels in Raven's flock. Raven had turned on them after they refused to power bomb Luna Vachon through a table. And Raven had already picked up another team in his flock, a group known as the Dudleys. Although none of the Dudleys are in the Dudleys just yet. This is the original Dudleys. This is Dudley, Dances with Dudley, and Big Dick Dudley at the time, because Daddy Dudley liked to get around a little bit. So
he did. This is the non-Devon, Bubba, and Spike Dudleys.
Bubba had not yet come in. Bubba was about to come in as the stuttering Bubba, and Devon, the quote-unquote black sheep of the family.
Yes. Yeah. It
was a different time, kids. It was a different time.
Very different. By the way, Dances with Dudley is probably my favorite Dudley boy name ever. Has to be.
He was a Pennsylvania worker, not Native American.
No.
Thing. Yeah, and he got injured during one of these. I mean, look, this was a weird mix of we'd have because on Gangsta's Paradise as well, Rey Mysterio and Psychosis have a phenomenal match after this match, which is a double dog collar match for the tag team titles. Now, this is everything you've come to love and hate about ECW, because it is violent. It is violent. You got guys getting put through tables. You have power bombs. You have all sorts of things. You have overbooking in many ways, because they make this into a 2 out of 3 falls match when Stevie Richards doesn't show up for the match. Turns out
that was strange, by the way, because I didn't expect the 2 out of 3 falls match. Sorry to cut you off. I just no.
It's fine.
Raven.
I was expecting something else, because in ECW, it didn't matter who, if the team was there. If one person with the tag belts was there, they could defend the tag belts with anybody of their choice.
Yes, I remember that as well.
So I was expecting a surprise of some kind, and they said, "Oh, Stevie Richards had broken his arm." Blah 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 blah. This is also on Hardcore TV, episode 128. If you don't have
games,
120 what?
It's 126.
It's 126. I thought it was 128.
That was 126. I went back and watched it. That's how I thought.
Joel has corrected me.
I'm just going to correct you on the air, because
if you haven't seen Gangsta's Paradise, though, watch the entire event. It's fantastic. Yes. But yeah, so the Pit Bulls come out. They have the collars on. Immediately, Raven's kind of a little bit Raven had it on immediately. They just come out and put it on. As opposed to, this was the other part I liked about the Piper one. There was a certain amount of pomp and circumstance with putting on the collars at the time. They had seconds who were putting on the collars for them and things of that nature. This one, let's just get to the fight. And of course, Bedlam takes loose. They're going all over the arena. Pitbull number 1, I believe, goes to the back, drags out Stevie Richards, who is bladed, and the match is on.
So I don't know about you, but when they were announcing this match, and they do the 2 out of 3 falls, and they've got the Pitbulls in the ring, and it's just Raven, and Raven's like, "Go ahead and put on me." I almost expected it to be both Pitbulls get chained to Raven.
Yes.
And that's it. And that
I
would have
did
been
as well.
The most clusterfull match you can think of. And I would have loved it. But like that alone would have made everything for me. And instead, we just get the one Pitbull attached to Raven. And then, like you said, Pitbull 1 goes out and finds Stevie Richards. By the way, going back to Dances with Dudley, Adolfo Bermudez is his name.
Yes.
And he changes his name in the 2000s to Chief Dudley. So he himself realized that maybe I can make this a little less.
Yes, the kayfabe explanation was that Daddy Dudley had gone to a Native American reservation in Oklahoma and done what Daddy Dudley does.
Dances with
Dudley, Dances with Wolves, a movie that came out about the same year, 1994, 95. So yes, there's a little insensitivity there. Now,
so the match is 2 out of 3 falls.
The match is 2 out of 3 falls. The good thing about this match that I love is that like even for the first and second falls, it's simple moves that knock the guys out. There aren't a lot of kickouts in this match. It's a DDT, or no, it's a pile driver through a table,
Through a table, yeah.
which should knock a guy out. Still did, as early as 4 or 5 years ago. It was a 3-month go away for a while type of move, and a power bomb through a table, which they did on Stevie Richards. I was like, God bless them. Because eventually we become so desensitized that, pile drivers through tables get a 2 count, and you're just like, what? Me, I'm just like, these people are now superhuman where they can take 12 bumps through tables and kick out at 2. And so that was refreshing. What isn't refreshing is that then we have almost every program in ECW come through this match.
Yes, it does. You're right.
Because eventually Pitbull number 1 can't continue. So Tommy Dreamer comes out to connect himself, and he wins the match. But then Bill Alfonso comes out and does a dusty finish, says we can't do this anymore. No, this isn't right, because the entire story was that Tommy Dreamer had never pinned Raven. And that lasted. It's one of the best long-term stories they ever told in ECW, is that he never got the win over Raven. But then Todd Gordon comes out. He's the commissioner, and the chokeslam had been banned because 911 used the chokeslam. 911, the epitome of the Goldberg, Jade Cargill type of wrestler, who wasn't very good, but was over because all he'd do is come out and chokeslam people and leave. That's what he do. That's what he does here. Comes out, chokeslams Bill Alfonso,
and leaves.
And leaves.
But also, sorry, there was another thing with this match, was that if the Pitbulls lost, they will have had
They would
to
break up.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was a big thing in ECW too, is you'd have these teams, and if they lose, they disband, because the Bad Breed had done that earlier, Ian and Axel Rotten.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was earlier or after this, but it was one of those. They'd always put that stipulation on there. I failed to say that the reason for all this cluster was because after the second fall against Richards, the Dudleys come out. And this is Dudley and Dances with Dudley, the Jeff Brantley, who would later, he'd go during the new era of WWF. When Sid and Shawn Michaels and those types were at the top of the card, he'd do some prelim work as Charlie Hunter, I believe. After all this,
that's an awful name.
Well, he wasn't pushed. He was there to take bumps.
Right.
Because he worked in ECW. So you take all these big bumps, and then they come out and go, hey, take some damage for us. And you do. So, and Big Dick on crutches. I don't think he ever fully recovered from this, to be honest with you. He'd
like
always
Orton
be on crutches every time you'd see him.
Like Orton with the cast. It's all the same. Yeah.
Well, Orton with the cast was a work. This was not.
I don't know what you're talking about, bud. I don't know what you're saying. La 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 la. Don't care.
But yes, we'd have the Dudleys. We had 911. We had Bill Alfonso. We had all this. We had Tommy Dreamer get the pin, and then eventually goes away. Pitbull number 1 again I believe puts on the collar again so that the match can continue, and then they get the pin and do that. Remind me of the end of this match if you can.
I totally blanked. Because I'm at the same spot where you are. I'm like, 911 comes in, 911 does the choke slam.
I believe Francine comes in at some point because she's in there.
Yeah, there's a whole thing. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it. Oh my god, this is awful.
But I remember the end. Because the Pitbulls win and they don't have to break up, and there's a big celebration. I believe Tommy Dreamer may have DDT'd Raven.
That sounds about right.
And put a guy on top. I think that's what the end is here. Don't yell at us at the video and correct us. We're going on memory here because we watched a lot of wrestling in the past 2 days. And didn't take
exactly. Notes. I can't think of any other way to do it.
I didn't.
Now
take
I got to go
notes.
back. Now I got to go back and see. Now
but the Pitbulls win, and we don't see a lot of dog collar matches after that, save for that British Bulldog Vader match in WWF. They're here, and then we get to Ring of Honor decides to pull this out of the mothballs.
Well, they pull it out of the mothballs, but they also bring in. Well, they don't bring him, but they have Raven.
Yes.
So who are you going to have? The guy that we just talked about having a really, really good dog collar match. You're going to bring him back to do this feud with CM Punk, who is about to go into his own feud of dog collar match.
Okay, so now here is where you get historical with me.
Sure.
because this is not when I've never watched this era of Ring of Honor, but it appears to me that now you can correct me if I'm wrong. Punk is of course a heel because he is straight edge and he's doing
Yep.
the whole I don't drink alcohol, I don't do drugs type of thing. I assume this is because of that this feud starts because of all of Raven's past alcohol and drug uh, issues.
It's a bit of that, and it's also the fact, and I'm sure people in the comments will yell at me a bit too, but it's also the fact that, at this point, ECW has shut down.
Yes.
Most of the talent have moved to work different territories, including Ring of Honor. A whole bunch of them had
Yeah,
shown
because
up.
Danny Doring's here in the
Yeah.
audience at one
Yeah,
time.
Danny
Yeah.
Doring shows up. We see Tommy Dreamer again show up
Yeah.
in this match in Ring of Honor. So the whole idea here becomes, excuse me while I
The booking of this match is so frighteningly similar to the Pitbull's Raven.
yes. Yes. So the whole idea here is that Punk is sick and tired of all the extreme guys coming through Ring of
Ah,
Honor, and
gotcha.
so he wants to put an end to EC. He basically wants to like kill ECW dead. Ironically, he then goes into WWECW and has like his best run because Paulie believes in him and wants him to succeed. Regardless, the dog collar match that Raven and Punk has ends up being quite the bloody mess of its own, and they're doing a lot of the moves, and some of the stuff that you and I talked about at the top of the show is that there's a bunch of moves and not a lot of that using the chain psychology.
Yeah. And then it gets into, some of Punk's. Although the thing I liked about this is when they do the moves, it would sometimes screw them because they'd land on the chain.
Yes, but that's what I was talking about. That's when it works, but they
Yeah.
have to be able to land on it not just safely but also in a way that makes sense.
Because they're not using a gimmick chain here. They are actually using a heavy metal chain as opposed to some sort of plastic thing. And that's the part I liked. Watching this though, man, I wanted the commentators to shut up occasionally.
Yes, that's true.
They just let it breathe when there's a big move. They say because these two, you think I talked a lot on this show, which I am. I'm realizing in my head. Uh,
That's why I have you
yes,
here.
but these two would not. I don't know who it sounded like Prazak and somebody who was.
One is Prazak. I don't think it's Lenny. Who are the Ring of Honor announced
It
team?
wasn't Naylor, I don't think.
I gotta look it up. No, I don't think it was
In
Rollins.
2003, no, but these guys just would not let any amount of silence propagate during this time. Now, I loved the promo before the match. The match itself is fun. Look, Raven's game to do the 2003 mid-aughts indie style with Punk. I find, you get the crotch shots, you get dragging a guy off the turnbuckle. You do get the occasional neck thing, although the collars are much looser now, so I'm not afraid of whiplash as much.
Yes.
Um, and then you get the Dreamer stuff with the beers and things like that.
And that was kind of where things got a little bit convoluted.
Yes.
You have and again, you tie up the Dreamer and Raven stuff. They're friends again. Dreamer comes out in a Hooters baseball jersey.
Well,
And
here's where
then
it gets convoluted for me, and I don't know about you, but this happened also. I mean, this happened as far back as the Duggan, the Duggan Sawyer dog collar match as well. But of course, it happened in ECW and it happened here, and it will probably happen in the MJF matches as well.
mhm,
It takes away from the stipulation of the dog collar if you're also using chairs and
it does.
tables and things
Yes.
like that. And that's always been kind of my problem with other gimmick matches as well. If you're using the gimmick should be the story as opposed to dragging in other toys and things to play with. And for me, like the ref shot with the chairs and things like that, that's where it became convoluted for me as well.
Yeah, and I agree that at that point you kind of ask the question, what's the difference between this and just a regular hardcore match? Is there anything that really differentiates
Exactly.
a dog collar match from some
Well,
sort of
well, it just
hardcore
means the guy
war?
can't run. Well, then you can do it in a cage, and the dog collar match means nothing.
Exactly. So at that point, there are certain things in a dog collar match that I don't necessarily want to see. And the tables, going back to the ECW match, the tables, it worked because that was
Yes.
also just the chaos of ECW.
Yes.
But then they brought it to Ring of Honor because it kind of spoke to the feud that Punk and Raven were having. Raven introduced a lot of the hardcore elements to that dog collar match. Punk just kind of followed suit because he had to. It wasn't necessarily his call. I'm speaking in the kayfabe of the match and
Right.
the psychology of the match. He did it to survive.
I'm trying to remember the Brody Cody dog collar match,
Where
and
they
I
had
think
Greg sitting in the front
where they
row.
had Greg, yes, they had Greg Valentine half asleep, sitting there. Takes an hour for him to wake up at any time, but I don't think they did any of the bells and whistles in there, did they?
I don't think so either. I think they
Yeah,
played it pretty close to normal,
yeah.
as normal as a dog collar match
As
could
normal
be.
as a dog collar match guy, and the collar was the thing. The thing about that match was the hatred wasn't built up. It was just here's a something from Cody's past that he really likes. He'd like to do this.
Yeah.
So, which
So
I admire, but at the same time, it's like there needs to be a certain amount of heat for this kind of match to go on, and it was for the previous three, but
yeah.
not for that one.
So there's also a little bit about, these kind of matches, these dog collar matches on the indies and how they've kind of evolved since then. And I sent you one that was more of a clips thing and the other one that was the full match. And they both involved MJF because I don't
Right.
think people remember or know that MJF has had two dog collar matches of his own. The first one was in AAW in 2018 and he took on AC Romero. Now, the the two of them having a dog collar match is funny enough because like
Yes.
this big guy,
The the
little,
visual of that was hilarious, and
yes,
I hope he brings some of those things back for this match, even though it's not a big like him ducking out before getting the dog collar on him. I thought that I think
he's gonna do that. He
say what you
100%
will
is going
about
to do
Larry
that.
Zbyszko, but I love a good stall
Yeah,
moment.
I think MJF is gonna do that at the
Yeah.
match because this has been the story that he's been telling this whole time. He's a little bit scared. He's a little scared about doing this match with CM Punk for
Hmm.
various reasons. One of which being he's gonna get his ass kicked.
Yep.
So for him to stall, that'd be perfect. And again, AC Romero in this case goes and starts loading up the ring with toys, and it's everything that you and I were just talking about. At one point, he goes for I think there was a oh no, there's a different match where there's the chairs are set up
Yes.
and MJF gets planted, but we'll get to that
Planted
in a
through the
minute.
chairs. Yeah.
Yeah, but regardless, the Romero MJF dog collar match was very much just a big long chain and a bunch of
And
spots.
a
And
bunch of
that's not to
spots.
say it was bad or good. It's just very different from the matches that you and I've been talking
It's
about.
very shindy, as we like to say. It takes the it's basically, hey, we're doing an indie wrestling thing. We need some gimmicks and we need a lot of violence.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying there. And there may have been a story going into it. I don't really have a full background understanding of AEW in 2018. I know that they tried to make things more cohesive in the past, but in 2018, I don't know where they were. Regardless, again, the match itself, it's fine. It's well wrestled. There just might not be the
Yeah, it
psychology
just
that's
it didn't do a lot for
yeah,
me. I liked it. Don't get me wrong. It was fine for a toys match where you. But for me, again, what gets me off in wrestling in terms of that is the build, and I don't know anything about the feud. I'm just watching the match.
yeah.
But if I know enough about the feud, and if they've built it to a point where they need this dog collar match, and it's going to be a fight, I'm in. But again, a dog collar match, I don't want to see a well worked match. I want to see two guys punching each other and then using the chain to hurt each other. That's what I want.
So let me bring you up to my neck of the woods in Canada, in Hamilton, Ontario, which is like about an hour away from where I am in Toronto.
Okay.
A1, which is Ethan
Yes,
Page's company,
I'm
he
aware of that.
had a dog collar match with MJF
Okay.
at his
Ethan
show.
Ethan Page and
Ethan Page and MJF had a dog collar match, and it's very good. And you can find it. I believe it's on High Spots,
I'll
or
take a look for that then.
wherever you find A1 wrestling. And these two, again, the match is good. They use the toys again. We were just alluding to the chairs that were set up side by side, and they go for the power ball or the sorry, what was it? The pile driver. So they do that spot. But one thing that I really, really loved was at one point they're on the floor and they're going and brawling through the crowd using the chain and all that. And at one point, MJF is on the ground and he unhooks his collar. He
Nice.
unhooks the chain and he runs around the venue Sorry, he doesn't run. He actually crawls.
He's gonna do that. He's gonna do that
He's gonna
too
do it,
this time.
and he's
Yeah.
gonna but this is perfect because he just crawls out of sight, out of the camera line, and then he gets himself all the way around, and then he attacks Ethan Page again. And that stuff like that is actually really fun, innovative heel tactic
It's good heel
in a dog
work.
collar match.
Is
Yeah,
you take the stipulation and you find the loophole in the stipulation
exactly.
to make it work for you. I love those types of things. Yeah, that's great. Like just the tying around on the post thing where nobody ever thinks of that kind of thing to use for the weapon. And yes, what you do is you make the stipulation the star. And
Yep.
that's my problem with the other toys and stuff like that. You make the the dog collar chain the star somehow, and you make that the story. How can I use this to do different spots? How can I use this? How can I get away from this so that I can attack the other guy? Because he's going to adhere to the rules and I don't have to. I love those types of that type of thinking.
So without this turning into a preview for Revolution,
Okay.
I have a question for you. We're gonna see two matches that are very much based in violence. One is the gimmick match, the dog collar match, which we just spent a lot of time talking about. The other one is Moxley and Danielson, where the whole premise of the match is Mox saying, "We don't work together until we bleed together." How do you work a match that is very much scoped in violence and make it different for four of these men in two of these matches? Is there a way to do it?
Yes, I think so. And I think what you have to do is you have to make Danielson and Moxley no toys in there and just hard hitting, the kind of match that you have where like they don't need to necessarily bleed from the head. You
Okay.
know, you have those. I mean, you've seen those matches where Danielson comes into the back, and he had this. I forget. I think it was a Gulak match. Don't quote me on that. When he was still with WWE, where his entire chest looked like hamburger, and it was bleeding from the chest. Those types of things. You just make it hard hitting, as opposed to moves and finesse. And he's got to do that thing where he flips over the top rope and then does a running knee type of thing. You make it the kind of, I mean, the match that I would compare it to would be one of the '89 trilogy between Flair and Steamboat, where they just chop the crap out of each other for about 30 minutes and just a walk and brawl would be fine for Moxley and
Yeah.
Danielson in some ways. In addition to, okay, once the blood starts to flow about 30 minutes, 25 minutes into the match, then it becomes grinding submissions and things like that, where you're trying to get the other guy to give in and get your respect type of thing. But I wouldn't use a single chair shot. I wouldn't use a table. I might even possibly not even use like running a guy into the stairs or the post type thing. You just make it about the two of them and what their fists and their feet can do to each other.
So I was about to say, don't use those things. Don't use the ring post. Don't use the stairs.
Oh, ring
If you're
post.
gonna
Oh, and the blood's flowing. Wah,
Well,
wah.
that's the thing. I think if you're gonna bleed, it's got to look hard way. It's got to
Yes.
look like someone's knuckles made contact with your
Yes.
forehead or
Yes.
wherever, and that's how you bleed.
I
I agree
agree.
with you there. And maybe in the comments, y'all have a different point of view. Maybe you think that it's totally fine that these two matches can have some sort of similarities between each other, or you think that they're going to be so different
What I
that it's
don't want
okay.
is the Adam Page versus Bryan Danielson match where they went to the blood early like that,
Yeah,
and
they
then
went
they
right
made
to it.
it part of the quote unquote story where the guy was losing so much blood, but they didn't earn the blood, in my opinion. It just came, and
Right.
and you're just like, okay, so they're just going to use this as a crutch kind of type of thing, as opposed to having the match intensify and then get the pin or whatever.
So after all of this, after all of the historical discussion and all the filibustering we've done, we have a very important question to ask each other.
Okay,
Who's going to win this match at Revolution between MJF and CM Punk?
for me, it has to be one of two scenarios, and I'll tell you the one that I'd go with. There has to be a moment in this match where MJF looks to be really begging for Punk to stop it, and for Punk to kind of, oh my, because the promo was the villain origin story, It was Batman really created the Joker type of thing. And when he came out and goes, "Is this real?" and Punk and MJF just walks off defeated. It put that mind game thing in doubt. So that has to come into play during this match at this time. Now, one of two things can happen. It can either be stupid babyface syndrome, where Punk gets suckered in, and then MJF takes advantage of it in some ways. Or it has to be he gets suckered in for a moment and realizes, hey, this is mind games. I don't want to be a stupid babyface, and then just goes to town on CM Punk. I think one of those two things should happen. My fear is we're going to get a lot of Shawn Spears and Wardlow in this match for some reason. I don't know that for a fact.
The
But
only
it
reason
feels like they might ECW it a bit.
the only reason I don't think they'll do that, at least in terms of Wardlow, is because he's in the ladder match. He's got that face of the Revolution ladder match.
But overall, I think Punk has to lose this match.
I agree with you.
Because I think MJF has to go on to be I think MJF has to go and get elevated to the world title program sooner than later. And I think the way to do that is to beat Punk here.
I think beating Punk is the play. I think being a little underhanded is the play. I don't think it would be a stupid baby face syndrome thing. If anything, I think that they'll try to play that and Punk will think the better of it. They'll do it early. And then Punk will.
And then the underhanded thing comes in when MJF realizes that his mental trick didn't work. Now I need to rely on some help here somewhere.
Yeah, or I can take off the dog collar, run around the ring, and beat the shit out of Punk afterwards. Something like that. Regardless of how they do it, I do think Punk loses the match. I think Wardlow wins the face of the Revolution ladder match. And again, this isn't a prediction show.
No.
But I think that we then move on to MJF and Wardlow really having their real tete-a-tete,
yes.
their real tension builds. So the two of them start building towards something of a breakup, of a feud, whatever it is. And MJF is then elevated further. And so is Wardlow.
And I think this might also be the start of maybe a change in Punk somehow. Cause I think he needs to cut a promo after losing that match in some ways. And I don't know if turning Punk heel is necessarily the play here because we've already kind of turned Danielson heel in a way. But I do like a long-term story of Punk being the guy that ruined wrestling for a certain generation of fans. I think that's kind of an interesting play, despite the fact that right now he's kind of AEW's John Cena. He's the guy that comes out and makes everybody happy.
Maybe there's a way to have him in that tweener role where he just upsets all of the people that he let down and beats them all, but then still makes everyone from today happy.
But he loses nothing by losing this match either, I don't think. Right. I mean, he's still going to be a star. He's not the face of your company, so you don't need to, but he is still a draw. So you keep him strong. MJF wins in an underhanded way in some way, and you move on from there.
I think we did it. We solved everything. We've talked about dog collars. We introduced it. One hell of a historical run through. I think we got some of the coolest stuff that all brings this MJF and CM Punk dog collar match to light and things that people should be looking for at Revolution.
And hopefully, I mean, it's a fun stipulation. It's just stick to the stipulation, in my opinion.
Do you think this is the last time for a little while that AEW uses the dog collar?
I think they should. I mean, because we had Cody and Brody, what, a year and a half ago?
And didn't they do it again recently?
Did they?
They did another dog collar match after Cody and Brody.
Oh, I can't remember that. The only match that I have in my head right now for some reason is Saturn and Jericho at WCW Uncensored 98, which they did as well, which had no real stipulation to it. But let me see if I can find it real quick. Dog collar AEW.
I'm almost certain that they've done it twice.
Cody and Brody Lee is the one that I see. They might have done a chain match or something. It might not have been dog collar per se.
Yeah. Maybe. Okay, I'm seeing it here.
But you know, you don't need to bring stipulations out all the time. You just need to bring stipulations out when they're needed. And that's what I want about like what I don't like about the company up north versus this company is like if you have the time for a blood and guts match and you have that many people feuding with each other and the only way to do that feud is to put two cages together or two rings together in a cage, do that. But don't just, hey, it's March. We got to bring out blood and guts this year. I don't like that. Build the story so that it matters. And then people will remember these stipulation matches more. Number one, if you stick to the stipulation, but also number two, if the stipulation means something in the context of the feud.
I agree. And I think that's probably one of the better things that we see out of AEW versus WWE for sure.
Yeah,
Let's get out of here.
let's do it.
We've talked about too much wrestling. Jeff, where can the people find you on the internet?
I talk wrestling way too much, and I snark and I troll Joel at Crap Game 13. I do a show weekly after Dynamite called The Dynamite Show, oddly enough, on Fight Game Media. I also do a show on Voices of Wrestling called Shake Them Ropes. It's kind of a lighthearted take on all things domestic wrestling, usually WWF and AEW. Every week, you can follow that show at Shake Them Ropes, all one word. And occasionally I'm in the Fightful neighborhood, although Sean Ross Sapp, he doesn't write, he doesn't call. He went out for milk and cigarettes and then never came back. No, actually, I was supposed to do the Rumble post show, but then I started watching football way too much. But yeah, I'll still occasionally be in the Fightful neighborhood, and I'll be on Fightful Overbooked with Joel whenever Joel wants to talk historical wrestling of some kind.
Said it once, I say it again. I love doing these chats with Jeff. It's a good historical romp, and it's a good opportunity for us to kind of discuss the things we know, the things we love, and how we get to our wrestling fandom. That's Fightful Overbooked, youtube.com/Fightful Overbooked. Come and grab a subscription to us here. It's free. Do it. Come on, dropping content every single day. I'm at Joel Pearl, JoelPearl. Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary. We'll see you in the next one. Enjoy Revolution, by the way. It should be a good show.